So tonight, you're going to see another familiar face. I get the privilege of introducing Taylor Hills. And Taylor has such a presence about her. I'm sure you guys have seen her here. And she has such a heart for the youth and such a heart for ministry. And she's going to be sharing about obedience tonight and just the different steps that we can take to follow the Lord in obedience and what that tangibly looks like. Because I think a lot of times we know we're supposed to obey, but we sometimes don't know what that even means. And she has done you guys a big favor and really broken it down. And so you'll be able to resonate with a lot of pieces of her story that she has mixed in with this beautiful message. So let's give Taylor a beautiful round of applause.
Thank you. Can I get a table or something to set my computer on? Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be here tonight. I'm just gonna wait for this table. Sorry, guys. Probably should have asked in advance. Well, I'm just going to pray us in while we're waiting. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this night. I thank you for every single student in this room tonight. Lord, I pray that you would just be preparing their hearts, Lord, to receive what you have for them, Lord. I pray that you would just speak through me tonight, Lord, that you would minimize my voice and maximize yours, Lord, that these would be your words flowing through me right now. In your name, amen. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm Taylor, for those of you who don't know me. I'm Jessica's daughter, older sister to Kylie and Brecken. They're out here somewhere. And yeah, I'm 19. Heather explained a little bit about me. I have a huge heart just for youth and ministry in general. I just dropped out of college to pursue ministry. So that's a little bit of my background. Today we are going to be in 2 Kings chapter 4. So if you brought your Bibles, I'd encourage you to take them out and flip to there. All right, I'm going to read it. One day, the widow of a member of the group of prophets came to Elisha and cried out, "My husband who served you is dead, and you know how he feared the Lord. But now a creditor has come, threatening to take my 2 sons as slaves. What can I do to help you?" Elisha asked. "Tell me, what do you have in the house?" "Nothing at all except a flask of olive oil," she replied. And Elisha said, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Then go into your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it is filled." So she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. "Bring me another jar," she said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her. And then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, "Now sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over." So today I'm going to be breaking this down and talking to you about different steps of being obedient to the Lord. So if you're taking notes tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about ingredients to obedience. So I'm going to jump right in. The first one is clear eyes. So this might sound a little weird at first. So in verse 2, Elisha asks the widow, and just to break it down a little bit, for those of you who don't really understand the context of this, Elisha is a prophet. So back then, they didn't really have the Holy Spirit. So there were prophets who could speak to God for other people and then tell them what they said. So this widow came to Elisha and said, like, "Hey, my husband just died. I'm all alone. It's just me and my sons, and I have absolutely nothing. My sons are going to get taken away from me, and then I'm really going to be alone. Like, what can I do? What is the Lord saying?" And Elisha talked to God, and then God told Elisha that this is what she needed to do, the whole olive oil thing. So in verse 2, it says, "What can I do to help you?" Elisha asked. "Tell me, what do you have in the house?" And she responded, "Nothing at all except a flask of olive oil." So right off the start, I want you to imagine your house. You can imagine your entire house, your kitchen, whatever, all your kitchen cabinets, and they are completely bare, like literally nothing in them, just one little jar of olive oil. You have no food, no clothing, nothing in your house, just olive oil. If someone came up to you and asked, hey, what do you have? Like, what could you give me? Or what do you have? Like, what are your possessions? I think if that was me, I would say nothing. I literally have nothing, because that's what it would feel like. She had pretty much nothing, but she had clear eyes to see the one thing that she did have, the one thing that the Lord had given her, and that was that little bottle of olive oil. So this first step here is kind of, the first two steps I'm going to be going over is more of how you can first hear what the Lord is kind of calling you to, maybe hear what he's trying to nudge you to do. And then the last three steps are going to be more of how you can step into that. So the first thing is clear eyes. You need to see what the Lord has already given you. The Lord uses what we already have. Don't downplay what he has given you. So whether that be a sports team you're on, maybe money that you have, relationships that you have, little things that you have that might seem small to you, those are the exact things that the Lord is going to use. The next step is privacy. So in verse 5, in verse 4, then go into your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. I think this is a very easy part of this story to skim over, but it actually caught my eye, and I was like, why does it tell her to shut the door? Like, they could have just left that part out. But then I dove deeper in, and I'm thinking about my own life, and the times that the Lord has encountered me and spoken clearly to me is when I have gotten in private, alone with him, praying, listening to worship music, reading my Bible, and really hearing out for him. That means no distractions, nothing else going on around you. And that's when he's going to whisper to you and speak to you and nudge you in the direction he wants you to go. So in Matthew 6:6, it says, but when you pray, this is the Lord speaking, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So in order to obey what he is calling you to do, you have to get alone and quiet with him to hear what he is asking of you. You're not going to be able to hear his voice if you're just constantly surrounded by your friends' voices, or even at youth group here at the altar. Yes, you can 100% encounter God at the altar. It's happened to me. It can totally happen to you. But it is going to be hard to discern his voice when there's a lot going on around you, versus in your room behind closed doors and you're not paying attention to anything else but him. So privacy is a huge step. That also just, when you think about your own relationships in your life, so friendships, whatever your friendships look like, if you didn't take time to set aside time to spend with them, intentional time to spend with your friends, your relationships probably wouldn't look super great, if I had to guess. If I didn't take intentional time to spend with my friends and the people in my life, my parents, my siblings, I probably wouldn't have a very great relationship with them. And that is the exact same with our relationship with the Lord. If we don't take time to cut out to spend with just him, not being on our phones, not being with a friend, but just you and the Lord, that is, your relationship with him is not going to flourish. You're not going to hear from him. And you're probably going to feel lost if you don't take that time set aside with him. So my third ingredient to obedience is active faith. So right away we see that when this widow is asked to do this crazy weird thing to collect jars from her neighbors and fill them with olive oil, she could have kind of expected Elisha, like, hey, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm going to lose everything. She could have expected him to just perform a miracle, be like, oh, here, God provided you the money, pay off your debts. And because obviously she knew God can perform miracles, she could have just stood there and waited around for the Lord to do something. But instead, she was active in her faith. She did what Elisha told her to do. She didn't just wait around for something to happen. And her simple act of obedience of stepping out and being like, okay, I'm going to go be this weirdo that me and my sons are going to go knock on our neighbors' doors and ask them for jars with no explanation. Her simple act of obedience revealed God's already planned provision. So this whole plan that the Lord already had planned out for her, all these steps that he knew were going to fall into place, none of that would have been able to happen if she didn't say yes to the Lord right here. So this is a takeaway here. You have to give him your yes to the small things because his bigger picture for you is so much greater than you could ever imagine. But you're not going to be able to see that bigger picture. You're not going to be able to see the next steps if you don't say yes to the thing that he's telling you to do right now. And that can look so different in so many people's lives, whether that's, it could be a relationship that he's telling you need to cut off. It could be a job that he's telling you need to step away from. For you older people, juniors, seniors, it could be a college he's telling you maybe you really want to go to, and he's like, hey, like, you shouldn't go there. You should go here. Maybe he's nudging you in a direction of what you're supposed to do for sports in college or sports in high school. Whatever it may be, you have to give him your yes to whatever he's asking you to do before he can reveal the next steps of his plan to you. In Ephesians 3:20, it says, God can do anything, far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. So that just goes with my last point, that he has such a great plan for you, and he can do so much more than you can imagine, but he can't do it if you're not willing to step out and give him your all and say yes. So that leads me into the fourth step, which is commitment. In verse 5, it says, so she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. So if you just look at the first sentence in that verse, so she did as she was told. The widow did exactly as Elisha instructed her to do without any hesitation. She didn't ask questions. I think if I was imagining me in my house, let's say all I have is one box of cereal, and someone comes up and they're like, hey, in order for you to hear what the Lord wants you to do, you need to take this box of cereal and you need to go knock on your neighbor's doors and ask them for bowls and then just fill up all the bowls with cereal. I think I would probably say no. I think I'd be like, that's kind of weird. I'm not going to go knock on my neighbor's doors who I've never talked to in my life and ask them for empty bowls with no explanation. But that is exactly what this widow did. She didn't ask Elisha questions. She did what she was what she was told to do right away. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask questions. She just did it. And that is what the Lord needs us to do. So I oftentimes, when I feel the Lord nudging me to do something or step away from something, I often see myself asking the question, why should I commit? Why, God, why? I don't see any good that could come out of this. Why should I commit? And my answer to that, when you guys are feeling that way, is if God called you to it, he will see you through it. He's not going to call you to something and then have no steps planned out for you. If he's calling you to do something, calling you to step into a relationship with someone maybe you never saw yourself being friends with, and you're like, why do you want me to be friends with them? If he's calling you to it, he's going to see you through it. He has a plan. Maybe he's calling you to quit a sport you've been in your entire high school career or since you were a baby, and you're like, why do I feel like I'm supposed to be quitting this? He has a greater plan. Or maybe stepping into a new club, a new sport that you could never see yourself doing. He has a plan. If he called you to it, he will see you through it. Ephesians 2:10 says, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. That last sentence, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Many of you have probably heard this verse before, but he has already prepared it. He already has your steps planned out. And so in order for him to reveal those to you, you must fully commit. In my own life, this has looked different in many different seasons, but a big one for me was I graduated high school about a year and a half ago in 2023, and I had a whole plan of where I was going to go to college. I was planning on going to Anoka Tech, and I was going to go to become a surgical technician. I had gotten 2 years of college done in high school, so I just had about a year and a half, and then I would be able to be a surgical technician, and I had it all planned out. And it seemed like a great plan to me. it made sense. I was going to live at home. It was going to be cheap schooling. I would save lots of money, and it was the cheapest option, and I got to do what I thought I wanted to do. So that was my plan. And then comes June 2023, like the week of graduation, I was just feeling super uneasy about this. I was like, something doesn't feel right. I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I literally toured one college, and I just had no desire to go anywhere else. I was like, whatever. I had applied to a bunch of colleges and gotten accepted, but then I just like threw away everything. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. One of those colleges being Grand Canyon University in Arizona, which had always been my dream school. But I was like, I'm never actually going to go there. I would never move that far from home. And so the week of graduation, the Lord starts really tugging at my heart, like, okay, Taylor, you are not going the direction I'm telling you to go. And I was like, what does this mean, Lord? Like, am I not supposed to be going to college? Like, what am I doing? So I was praying about it. I didn't feel anything. And then I graduate, and that week of graduation, I got something in the mail from GCU, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I haven't heard from them in a long time. Kind of ignored it, threw in the garbage. The next day, I was going on a walk, and I was walking through my neighborhood, and I got a phone call from someone from Phoenix, Arizona, and I was like, what the heck? I don't know anyone from there. I answered the call, and they were like, hey, like, this is an admissions counselor from Grand Canyon. I'm just calling people on a list of like who's been accepted but hasn't enrolled in classes. And I was like, oh, like, I'm not interested. Like, take me off your call list. I'm not coming there. They were like, okay. And then the next day, I was driving home, and I was like behind a car at a stoplight, and I looked at the license plate in front of me, and it had the letters GCU on it. And I was like, okay, God, what is going on? So I'm praying, and that whole week, it was just one thing after another. All of a sudden, my whole Instagram feed was filled with GCU ads and all sorts of things. And I was just like, what is happening? And I was like, there's no way I'm moving across the country. And like, at this point, it was like school started in like a month and a half. I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm too far behind. I can't do that. And then it was the last straw. I was at Costco, and I looked across an aisle, and there was a boy in a Grand Canyon University hoodie. And I was like, okay, I'm in Minnesota. You don't see people wearing that often. And I was like, okay. So then I'm driving home from Costco with my mom, and we drive past Anoka Tech, where I was fully planning on going. And my mom was like, oh, are you getting so excited to go to school there? Like, it's coming up, like, you're like a month out. And I was like, not really. And she was like, what? And I was like, I don't think I'm going to go there. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I think I'm supposed to go to GCU. And she was like, huh? And I explained everything, and she was like, yeah, I think you are too. So that next week, I had my grad party, and it was really awkward the whole time. People were like, oh, what's your plans? And I was like, I had sent out on my grad cards that I was going to Anoka Tech. And I was like, I think I'm going to Arizona, actually. So there's a lot of confusion, but within the week, me and my mom had booked tickets to go on a tour to the campus July 15th, which is literally like a month and a half before classes started. And I did it, and I gave God my yes. I was like, okay, Lord. I went on the tour. I got home, and I was like, I have to go there. Like, he is just pushing me. Like, I can't deny it anymore. So I went there, and I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. I did not know a single person there. I didn't know anyone really in Arizona in general. I had no idea what I was doing. And I saw this quote the other day from Martin Luther King Jr. that says, faith is taking the next step even when you can't see the whole staircase. So this is what I was doing in this situation. I could not see any further steps ahead. I had no idea why I was going there. I didn't even have a major that I wanted to do. I literally was just like, okay, God, I'm going to this school. I'm going rooming with random people I've never met or seen in my life. I had no idea what I was doing. But I did it because I had faith that the Lord was going to carry me through it. Proverbs 16:9 says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. This is just another example of we can plan out as much as we want. We can think, I'm going to do this, this, and this after high school. I'm going to do this, this, and this in high school. But God is probably just laughing at your plans because he has something so much greater planned for you. And it looks so different for every single person, but he has every single step of your future already planned out for you. So That kind of brings me into my fifth and final ingredient is surrender. Now, this one to me, in my opinion, is the most important, the most crucial step that if you get anything from this message, please take this, because surrender is the only way that you can fully step into what God has for you. If you say yes to the Lord, but deep down you're still holding on to things and you're not giving him your all, he's not going to be able to use you in all the ways that he wants to. Luke 9:23-24 says, "Then he said to the crowd, 'If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross daily, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it.'" Again, many of you have probably heard this, maybe in a different version, but what this verse is saying is if you want to be Jesus' follower, this is Jesus talking here, you have to give up your own way. You have to give up your own desires, the things that your flesh wants, the things that you maybe find enjoyment in. You have to give those things up if you want to be able to fully follow him and take on everything that he has for you. He says, if you try to hang on to your life, so that means hang on to things you want, your flesh wants, hang on to things that you find worldly satisfaction in, you will actually lose your life. So what he means by that is you're not going to experience fullness of joy. You're not going to experience all that he has planned for you. You're not going to experience the fruitful, like the fruits of the Spirit in your life. You're not going to bear fruit if you're hanging on to the things of this world. But if you give up your life, so give up those fleshly desires, give up those things, and this can look so different. That can be relationships that are not honoring to God, relationships that you know are pulling you away from him. That means giving up those, giving up maybe drinking on the weekends, maybe whatever it looks like in your life, maybe giving up a sport that you have put your entire identity into and you realize that it's pulling you away from the Lord. It can look different for every person. But if you give up your life for Jesus, you are actually saving your life because you're saving your soul. You are going to find joy, peace, patience, all the fruits of the Spirit. You're going to start experiencing these things when you give up your worldly desires. So to kind of wrap up, I'm going to talk about the attitude that we must have when it comes to obeying the Lord. And then I'm going to share one more story of when I didn't obey the Lord and how that worked out for me. So Jeremiah 42:5-6 says, "Then they said to Jeremiah, 'May the Lord your God be a faithful witness against us if we refuse to obey whatever he tells us to do. Whether we like it or not, we will obey the Lord our God to whom we are sending you with our plea. For if we obey him, everything will turn out well for us.'" So again, this is another situation where these Israelites are talking to Jeremiah saying like, hey, tell us what God is telling us to do. And they're saying, we're going to do it no matter what, whatever it looks like. And I love where it says, whether we like it or not, we're going to do it. Because that is huge. That's the attitude we must have when we feel the Lord nudging us to do something or when we're asking God to show us the way. Oftentimes when you're asking God, what am I supposed to do in this situation, whether you're making a small choice in life or a big choice in life, we're asking God, like, what am I supposed to do? And he's going to give you the answer you don't want a lot of the times. Like, a lot of the times. It's going to be the option that you wish he didn't say. And you have to go in with this attitude of, God, whether I like it or not, I'm going to say yes to what you tell me to do. So in my own life, flashback a little bit when I decided to go to Grand Canyon University. It was August of 2023, so the month that I was leaving, and I was at a youth rally here, and I was at the altar praying, worshiping. It was my last night ever, like in the youth group setting before moving off to college. And someone, an adult mentor in my life, got a word from me from the Lord and came up and spoke to me and was like, hey, I don't know what this means, but the Lord is telling me to speak it over you, that you need to go to school, go to college with a fresh start. And she maybe didn't know what that means, but as soon as she spoke it, I knew what God was telling me. And at the time, I was in a relationship. And when I was moving back to college, or when I was moving to college, it was about 2 years that I had been with this boy. And right away, when she spoke fresh start to me, the Lord was like, you have to break up with your boyfriend. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. So I started bawling immediately because I knew what the Lord was telling me to do. And that week, I kind of wrestled with it, and I ended up convincing myself that that wasn't what he was telling me to do. I literally convinced myself, like, oh, no, like, she told me fresh start. That could have been a million different things. Like, that could have had nothing to do with my boyfriend, like, whatever. Even though I knew in my heart of hearts that he was telling me I needed to get out of this relationship. And I ignored him. I said no. I completely ignored what he was telling me to do. I moved to college in this relationship. And when I got to college, I was a mess. I think I put on a good face, but I was going to classes in the morning, and I would come home, and as soon as I would step in my apartment building, I would bawl my eyes out. And it had nothing to do with the relationship that I was in at the time. It was just, I didn't know what was going on. I literally would get home from my classes, step in my apartment, and just bawl. I would call my mom on the phone almost every single day, bawling my eyes out, being like, Mom, I need to come home. I was homesick, very homesick, but I knew it was something else. I was like, I'm a mess. And I had never experienced this in my life. And I didn't think about it for a while, and then second month of college, I was like, okay, this has been going on for way too long. Like, at this point, I was talking to my mom about moving home after first semester. Like, I was like, I can't be here anymore. And I was like, God, like, why did you bring me here if I'm just, like, depressed and sad and so lonely? I couldn't make friends. Like, I didn't even really want to. Like, I couldn't make new relationships with these people. I was so lonely, and I just hated it. And before I knew it, God, again, back to step number 2 of privacy, I was on my knees, reading the word, worshiping, crying out to the Lord, like, why am I here? Why did you bring me here? I'm so lost. I'm in so much pain. I just want to go home. I need to get out of here. And he brought me back to that moment of when he told me, fresh start here. And I didn't obey him. He was like, Taylor, you're not listening to me. Like, you did not do what I told you to do. How am I gonna reveal to you what I have for you here in Arizona if you don't listen to me? And so I was like, oh my gosh. So I kind of talked to my boyfriend about it at the time. And then I went home in November over Thanksgiving break and broke up with him. And I was like, as soon as I did it, I left the conversation, I went home, and I was like a different person. Like, a weight was lifted off my shoulders, this burden I had been carrying around for so long. I knew for over a year that I should not have been in that relationship, that I should have ended it a long time ago, but I just stayed in it because it was comfortable. I was like, fear of man. I was scared of what people would think, that I think we put on a really good show. So people thought that it was all happy and healthy, but it wasn't. And I think, that fear of man is what stops us a lot of times, you guys. That thing that is holding you back from saying yes to the Lord. If it is fear of man, I want you to lay that at his feet tonight, because that was what it was for me for so long. I was so fearful of what other people would think, what my parents would think, what my siblings would think, what people at my church would think, from youth group, my friends. They'd be like, what? Like, what? I thought you guys would be high school sweethearts. And like, that's what I thought my whole time too. So I was like, well, I'm out of high school now. So if I break up here, then I lose the high school sweetheart thing. Guys, that does not matter. Literally does not matter. Like, do you want the title of marrying your high school sweetheart or the title of marrying the man that God had for you? So this isn't just about relationships, but just in general, you need to lay down the fear of man at the Lord's feet. You need to have this attitude of obeying the Lord, that whatever he tells you to do, whether you like it or not, do it. I went back to GCU after Thanksgiving break. I stayed the whole year, both semesters. I met amazing friends. I started serving more at the church that I was plugged into there. I got into a Bible study with the most amazing girls. I grew in my faith in ways I could have never imagined. And I can confidently say to you right now that if I didn't obey the Lord and step into that with going to GCU and breaking up with my boyfriend, I would not be on this stage today. I would not be where I am today. And I give God all the glory for that. But if I didn't give him my yeses, I would not be here speaking to you today, because I would probably be a disaster still, because you cannot see what he has planned out for you until you give him your yes. So Shauna's going to sing this last song tonight, and it's talking about giving God your yes and telling him that you are available to him. Use me however you want to use me, God. And as we're singing this song, I just really want to encourage you guys, whatever that thing is that's been in the back of your mind this entire message, maybe you don't have anything, that's okay too. But that's maybe been in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I really need to do this. Like, I really need to say yes to God in this. I want you to say yes right now during this song, whatever that looks like, whether that's coming up to the altar, maybe going to ask for prayer and telling your leader what you're going to say yes to, or whatever that looks like for you. Give God your yes, and then step out when you leave this building this week, whenever that situation comes, because it's something more than just telling God yes, probably. It's probably something in a relationship or a sport or something in your life that you have to go out and do. So I encourage you to think about that. Give God your yes, and then figure out how you're going to do that this week, how you're going to go out and step out in obedience with whatever God is telling you to do. I'm just going to close this out. I'm going to pray right now, Lord. I thank you for this time. I thank you for every single student in this room. Lord, I just pray right now that as we sing Available, I pray that you would bring to mind in every single one of these students, whatever it is that they need to tell you yes to, that you would give them the boldness, the courage to say yes, and to step out and leave this building and walk out in whatever that yes is. Lord, I just pray over any of their hearts right now. I know that this can be so challenging, that any time I've given you my yes, it has come with a lot of tears and a lot of pain, but the joy on the other side of it is unmatched. So I pray that you would just touch every single one of these students right now and fill them with your love and joy, Lord. In your name, amen.